Murkage Dave, how you doing, man? Welcome to the Wordplay podcast.
In the building. What's happening?
Yeah, well, good. How's your day been? How's your morning been?
I'm feeling quite thankful at the moment. Do you know what I mean? It's like to be in this position,
Mm.
not everybody gets to be in this position. And I know there's a lot of things that I still need to that I still want to achieve, and there's a lot more to do. But sometimes you have to just like stop and think, raw, like, man's like here. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's been my day really.
Wow. And is that a different thankfulness compared to like, because you've had, I guess, in your career, like various points where you've created amazing work and you've put that out and you've further established yourself each time. Is that a different thankfulness to before, or just that feeling again?
I was talking to my mate about this last night. I feel like it almost like it's almost so that your brain does it so that you don't get gassed. And so it's like someone will pay you a compliment about the record and you say thank you, and then you'll forget that they said it. And I think it kind of like, you kind of like can't, it gets to a point where like your brain just screens out all the information basically. Like literally Stevie Wonder would have had to have rung me up and say, great album, man, for me to like really take it in. And I think that's a bit of a shame. So I feel like now that the album's been out for like a month, I've been taking some time to just kind of like really like think about where I'm at and like what's going on, and like just be thankful for it. Because at the time you're just more focused on, I need to be doing this, I need to be doing this, you know. And actually like there's a lot of people that make great music that aren't in my position. And if I even like 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, if I could have been in that position, my position I'm in now, then I would have been buzzing. So yeah, man, just have to. I'm always trying to push forward, but just trying to like just enjoy where I'm at the same time as well, you know.
I see. How do you do that? How do you slow down and like re-listen to what people are saying, the feedback you've had?
That's what I'm saying to you. You can't really, like, imagine like you've got like, obviously like your brain retains so much information, but it's like a desktop and a computer in it. There's only like, there's a bit that's at the front that is like what the information that you can access on like a daily basis or whatever. And I feel like if you had all those compliments just at the front of your brain, you would just be totally gassed. You would just be like, so it's like you just have to like just take stock and remind yourself and just look at where you've come. I don't have the answer really. It's just like a process that I'm kind of going through at the moment. Just, you know, like every time I walk out of my flat, I live in Hackney. Say if I walk down the street or I go for a drink or something, someone's like, man, love the album. And it's just like, oh shit, yeah, like it wasn't always like that, you know? So it's different now. So it's like kind of just try and be like, no, well done, man, and like keep going, but you're on the right path, kind of thing.
I see. And I remember a story you told on another interview about when you and Mike Skinner were doing your podcast, and Liam Gallagher came in, and he was really like humble and nice to this sound producer, I think it was, and, like really made time for him.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder, like, it's clearly something just, you know, from the videos of you meeting fans, having a drink, playing darts, having a laugh, having a nice time. And I wonder, like, you keep this lightness. It feels like you keep this lightness around your fans, and you make it quite nice and fun. Is that hard to maintain all the time? Or does that ever get tricky?
No, because I really like people. Like I'm very interested in people and how they work, and what's important to one person might not be important to the other person. They might have different priorities. But also like I'm very aware, it's not lost on me that, you know, like I feel like if you're an artist with like a label and you got a budget behind you, you got funding, you'd be like, you know, you might be a bit more. I mean, I'm not in that position, so I don't know. But it might be a bit easier to like take it for granted. But for me, I'm like, I love the people that are fans of my music. I love them, man, because like if we didn't have that, it's a two-way street, yeah. And if it didn't exist, I wouldn't be able to create for a living. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, like someone, what was it? Someone said it like, oh, like the fan, you know, I think it was another artist, and they were saying, oh, the fans feel like they've got a stake. Someone said, the fans feel like they've got a stake in my life, or they've got a stake in me. And I feel like they were kind of complaining about it. But in a way, for me, they are like, the fans are kind of like shareholders, bro. So it's like, if you see me, you can say hello. I say this on my Instagram all the time. I just say, look, because I'd rather that. Sometimes people like, they'll send me like a DM and say, oh man, I saw you on the overground, man. And I didn't say anything, but just, and for me, that's worse because that prangs me out that I'm being observed when I don't know. And I have to understand that sometimes that does happen. But I'd rather someone just said something to me and then I could like say something back rather than, do you know what I mean? So I guess everybody's different. It's different personality types, but I'm kind of like, I'm one of them people, I'm like halfway in between like an introvert and an extrovert. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I can kind of cope with it, you know?
And yeah, that's interesting that half and half you're speaking about, it kind of comes out, feels like it comes out in your music. And just talking also about feeling observed and that pranging you out, or the potential to do that. One of my questions is actually around that, actually, like, but about you and what or who shaped you into becoming such an observer, because it feels like that's what's in my opinion, and the music I listen to or love, what separates you from many other artists that I listen to is like, I don't think there's anyone I can think of in any genre I listen to that is as good at just observing the everyday and putting that in their music in such a digestible and pleasurable way to listen to. What or who shaped you into becoming such an observer?
The key, and I think this is something that I've only kind of like worked out recently. I think because I've always been like an outsider, like not necessarily like a loner, but just like never really fully accepted. Like I grew up, the area that I grew up in, like it's kind of like, you know, I don't know if you've heard, I've got like a song called Weird Kid in the Ends. It's on the We Need to Look After Us project that I did with Manga. I think that kind of like sums it up. And I say Murkage Dave changed my life. I got some lyrics about it there. But I think just growing up in the ends, but not really being like a typical ends person. And I think it started there, kind of like, you know, going to school off ends. And but even like little things like my parents were like really Christian, but like not in the kind of way that, you know, like you might assume it was like a gospel Pentecostal vibe, but it was like very serious kind of like theological, like Methodist church. So I think from that point, you know, that they like really observed like the Sunday like as the Lord's Day and shit like that. Like it was like, I don't know. So I think from that point, I was always kind of like, I've always had one foot in one world and one foot in another. Even like when I left London, I went to live in Manchester for 10 years. You know, when I was 18, I went to live in Manchester, and it was like, again, that thing of like, oh, Dave's all right, but he's from London, innit? So I've always had that thing of like not really belonging. And so like that makes, I think, you know, like it makes you pay attention to like how things work in order to survive, you know. So so when I went to primary school in that area, and like I learned that a certain thing that you did would cause a fight. But then when I went to secondary school, if you tried to fight someone for that thing, people were like, whoa, like, do you know what I mean? But then they would do much more horrible things to each other in like a smoother way. But it was like psychologically worse than fighting someone once. So I feel like from that point, I kind of had to kind of understand how all the systems work. And then I come back home, and then this is before like social media. So it's like, in order to like understand the slang, you had to pay attention. So I'll be on the bus and I hear someone use a new word I'd never heard before. And that's how I'll pick it. Do you know what I mean? But then, and then it just kind of went from there. It was just like, I think from being in all these different worlds and having to kind of like survive each one, I just learned like how to really pay attention to like human behavior and rules and words, language and stuff like that. And like even like I've spent a lot of time in France. Like I recorded a lot of my first album in Paris.
Oh right.
And like a lot of that, it was interesting because I can't speak French. Like I can understand a little bit, but I can't get involved in a conversation. If man are just talking, it's like I can't really. But so you start paying attention to other things because you can't understand the language. So that's another example of. But so you start paying attention to like body language. Oh, that person's a bit nervous. Do you know what I mean? That person's a bit. I think another thing that I'm realizing, these are things. It's a really good question because these are things I'm just working out about myself now. In the last, like across the pandemic, I realized that I'm quite like, I've got like quite a strong kind of like empath thing. So like I never realized, but like if I'm at a party and someone's like awkward, I can feel it. Or if someone's like upset, I can like, or if someone is sad, if I'm sat with someone and they're sad, I will feel sad as well. So it's kind of like a little bit, some of it is like survival, I guess. And some of it is like actually in me that I kind of like pick up on people's feelings and pick up on, I don't know. It's a lot of things. I mean, I'm giving you like bare different reasons. And another thing is just like growing up in London, bro. Like you had to pay attention to the nuances, you know, to know when a fight was going to happen or when someone was going to pull up to the bus stop and rob everyone or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like you had to kind of, the little things that were happening, you could kind of see ahead of the curve and go, oh yeah, that's going to happen. Let me maybe, you know. So I don't know. That's a really good question, and I think if as over the next few weeks, I'm going to think about that more and more and work it out. But I think I've given you a few options there at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably the truth of it. It's probably a combination of things. I especially liked or found it interesting you talking about being in different spaces and understanding the rules of each of them, or like having to quickly understand the rules and how to navigate each one.
Yeah,
I feel like I can relate to that in my life in many ways. And I went to a very different school to the one that I went to in the area I grew up in, and I can totally see that, man. And yeah, the London thing as well. But also you're talking about your parents and learning observance as a practice. Yeah, super interesting. All right. Next thing I'll ask you, so the name of your new album, The City Needs a Hero.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, who is your favorite fictional hero, or like who is top of mind as your favorite fictional hero?
it's a cliche one, but the first name that popped into my head was Batman. Because I think he's just like he's like, I mean, obviously, like, he's like a billionaire son in it, so it's like he's not like us, but as in like he's like, but that gives him the resources, but like he's like human, and he's like basically flawed, and in a way, like, his mission, it doesn't really like, it's probably not the right way to respond, like a therapist would be like, bro, like, right. Maybe you should do something else, like, do you know what I mean? So I feel like the idea that he's like a flawed person, and he's like, but he basically like does like everything in his power to like compete. I kind of quite like that, you know, that he's like almost like the best and the worst of like humanity, like wrapped into like one character. And I think that's why Batman as a character has endured across the ages, whereas I feel like they've really struggled with Superman. And I think actually one of the reasons why I think, this isn't a direct reason, but I think indirectly, sometimes I think like subconsciously people don't embrace things because there's something that they don't think about on a, you know, actually, but like, you know, your brain kind of knows it doesn't make sense. Like, why is Superman white? Like, you got to like, so Kryptonians are like basically like human beings, right? But their sun is different to ours. So when they come here, they've got more powers because the sun is different. But it's like, by rights, Superman should probably be like Chinese, bro, or like Indian or something.
Why?
Because like, why are all Kryptonians white? And I think that it's a flawed idea from there, because white people are a minority on the globe.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So it's like the chances of Superman and all of his dogs on Krypton being white is like very low. So I feel like it's a flawed idea from there. And then I think obviously like it was used as like a kind of, you know, he's like, you know, in the comic books, he's like helping America fight the communists and all this stuff. I don't know. I feel like they've struggled to like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they've struggled to kind of like make Superman work since like the 80s, really, like since like Christopher Reeve. I think it hasn't really ever. And like actually a lot of like, you know, obviously like with Marvel and stuff, a lot of these kind of like smaller, less important characters have kind of like popped off way more. And Superman is not really like the guy anymore.
I've never found like Superman very resonating. But it's funny you mentioned Batman.
Why would you find Superman relatable? He's just like literally he can do everything. He's like an all-powerful white man. Like, it's like, what is that? Like, it just doesn't make no sense. Like, he's come from another planet and he's Caucasian and he can do everything. It's just like, no, like, I can't, like, nah.
It's, 60s or whenever he came out.
Yeah, it's
just
some
kind of propaganda, isn't it?
It doesn't make no sense anymore. It doesn't make no sense. Like, obviously, like with Batman, it's like, well, yeah, he's like a billionaire orphan. Like, he's an American billionaire orphan. Yeah, the chances he's probably going to be white. Do you know what I mean? It's like, makes more sense. Do you get it?
I get it. It's even though he's a billionaire, it's grounded in a bit more reality.
It's just it's a believable story.
Yeah, interesting. I go to therapy and my therapist asked me something similar, and I came out with Batman as well, and then she was getting deep on Batman. So I have some new fodder to get back to with tomorrow.
Oh wow! Okay, we've got the same.
Yeah, well, and it's. I mean, Batman's an interesting one as well because I guess, I mean, like I know you spend a lot of time in cities, London is where your life started out, and he's a very big city superhero as well. He's not
Yeah.
in wherever Superman's from or wherever like many
Oh,
other
you see,
superheroes are from.
he lands in Kansas, doesn't he?
Mm,
So he
yeah,
becomes this kind of like, he's a country boy, isn't he?
yeah,
He
yeah.
does.
Similar for other superheroes. And but the other great thing about Batman, I think, is and what critics say is like amazing about Batman is the quality of his villains.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my next question. It doesn't have to be a Batman villain, but like, who is your favorite villain, or who's the most top of mind villain for you? Because there are some great ones, great characters.
I mean, I guess the ultimate villain is Terminator. Just like an unkillable robot from the future. I feel like that's like, it's funny, like I wasn't allowed to watch Terminator 2 when I was like, I remember everyone when I was younger, like they'd seen it and I wasn't allowed to watch it because my parents were very strict about what films we could watch. And so I only watched it quite recently, like properly. Like obviously, like it's like culturally, like pop culture it's just there, isn't it? So you know what it is. But I actually watched it end to end, like a couple years ago, like a few years ago, and it's like, man, like that. I mean, that film as a film, it's just inspired like so many films, isn't it? But like I think like the idea of a machine, because like I've been kind of like, I started reading like Keith Haring's like journals recently, and he's talking about in it like how like he feels like machines are like the you know, that's the next evolution of man. Like we're gonna like fuck up the planet, we're gonna fuck up, or we're gonna like, there's gonna be like a nuclear war, we're gonna destroy ourselves somehow. And but we've already created machines. And I mean, he was writing this in like the late 70s, but like, you know, to this point where like we've now created artificial intelligence, where like, you know, there was that thing, wasn't it like a couple of weeks ago where like they had to shut that thing down,
a Google machine that had like come to life. Yeah,
and it was like didn't want to get switched off because it wanted to be understood and all that stuff. So it's kind of like, I feel like that I find that really interesting, the idea of like machines being like the next step in human evolution, and probably the thing that will either kind of combine with us or outlive us as, you know, things go on. And like the idea of a machine coming from the future to our time and just like it cannot be stopped. I mean, that's like the most terrifying thing, isn't it? It's like, and then so another machine has to come from the future to stop it, I guess. But it's like, also actually, if you want to talk about a hero, what's her name? The mum in Terminator,
Sarah Connor.
Bro, maximum smoke. Like I have not seen someone on that much smoke. Like she literally, like her mentality, that's the mentality. If you want to win, you need that Sarah Connor mentality. She was not having it. Bro, like you're up against an unkillable robot and you're still just like on maximum smoke.
Yeah,
full respect to her.
And what a cool look as well. Like the vest she's in, but like she's really like toned, and she's just like constantly, like tunnel vision. She just wants to kill this thing, figuring out how to kill this thing. I get you.
Protect her son, you know.
Coming back to heroes and Batman in particular, what do you think Batman would make if he was to live? Like, what would he make of London or the UK if he was to live here?
I don't know. I mean, he's a that's a mad question. I mean,
whose ass would he kick?
I mean, brother, you need to. I mean, he needs to start with Boris Johnson. Really, start with him, bruv. I think the real goons. That's the real goons, isn't it? The real bad man is them, man. I feel like, but then I don't know. But maybe because like, That's the other thing about Batman though, because like when you think about it, does he like? He's an interesting character because he does kind of, in a way, like try and uphold the status quo. I guess he wants to bring about change. Like he has his foundation and stuff like that, and so he wants to bring about change in like a kind of smoother way. But a lot of the time, and I think this is obviously like good writing, isn't it? But like the villains in Batman, like they've got a point a lot of the time, but it's just more like the method. I think like the villains kind of show us. I think that's why villains are so like addictive, because they show us like a bit of ourselves that we're conditioned to like control. But in our wildest fantasies, we would probably do some shit. You know, it's like that film, Falling Down.
Okay, I haven't
You know
seen
that film? You haven't seen it?
No.
It's like Michael Douglas, and he's like just like a regular guy, and he just like one too many bad things happen to him in a day. He's just like fed up with his life, and something happens to make him snap, and he just goes ham. He just goes absolutely ham for the whole film, just like causing maximum destruction, just because like he's been pushed too far, like society's pushed him too far. I'd actually love to see a remake of that film. You should watch that film and
I'll give
like,
it a watch.
let me know what you think, because like
yeah, I will.
like because in the film he's kind of like racist as well. I think maybe he was in Vietnam or something. I need to watch it again. I think maybe he was an ex-soldier or something, and then like the way that society's treated him, he's just like, nah, fuck you, and he just goes nuts. But yeah, I'd love to see a remake. You know, like, okay, like this. I know I'm not answering your question at all. Sorry, but like, it just made me think. Like, you know, like, I think that there are a lot of like, sometimes like they'll remake a film. Say like they might like remake a classic film, yeah, and do like a black version, like an all black cast. And sometimes they're kind of shit. Like, I don't know if you've seen like Annie, the black version of Annie.
I know of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible.
Is it?
But like, yeah. But I think it's just because they just wanted to make a black version of it. But I feel like a black version of Falling Down, or it doesn't have to be black. It could be Asian version, or do you know what I mean, or Arabic version, or whatever. But it's like that could actually be sick if it was just like one microaggression too much, push man. And he just went absolutely ham for the whole film, just dealing with like middle class microaggressions. I could play that character.
Yeah.
I could play that villain.
If any script writers are listening, you know what to do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You see me in the music videos, you know I got some range.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Man's got some chops when it comes to the acting. I didn't answer your question at all. What would Batman do? What does London need? I mean, London really, London just needs. I think Britain as a country, London is actually. I was gonna say London needs more empathy, and it does, but I think like Britain as a country just needs to be more empathetic as a country. I feel like that is part. I think that is a big part of the problem that we have in this country, is that like everybody just kind of deals with the, you know, like my mum said that when, you know, my mum came to the country when she was, you know, I think like 8 or something. I can't remember exactly how old she was, but she says one of her memories when she was younger, you know, you got these two like she used to live in like a house where like, you know, you have like 2 doors, but then like the steps go down to the street. So like,
yeah.
So,
I think I know.
but it's like there's like one set of steps going down to the street, but then there's 2 doors for different houses. And she said that her neighbor used to clean their side of the steps only. Like, and I think that kind of sums up like Britain. It's like, it's actually harder to clean that one. If you've got a mop and some water, You may as well just do the whole stairs.
Mm.
It's like it's trying to hard doing only your side. That's like it takes more work. But I feel like that's like what kind of Britain is built on, isn't it? It's built on that kind of like it's an ex-empire, this kind of like colonial like superpower, and people are still. I feel like that mentality still kind of lives at the back of people's brains, and I think that's what. So Batman should maybe just go around doing therapy, bro. Just sitting in people's yards and just being like, talk to me. Why do you feel like this? Do you know what I mean? Try and build more of an empathetic society. I think that's what would solve a lot of our problems.
For sure. And it's interesting
Even
you mentioned... Sorry, go on.
Okay, so I know I've been going on for a while.
No.
Before the next question, but
Go for it.
even if you look at, like people, when one of the things, if you look at London, people always talk about knife crime. But, I mean, if you actually want to look at why knife crime, like stabbing, like young men stabbing each other has been happening in this country forever, like way before, like I don't know when it started, but like it's like a thing. I mean, it's like since like I don't know. I'm talking about like I don't know when that shit started, but it was like it's not like something from the last few like decades. It's like, and then like, so like when my dad came to the country, right? He was like him and his generation, they were running from the National Front, right? And then when you get to the 80s, they toughen up and they like start moving, like the blacks and the Asians. Once you get to the 90s, it's like, you got more identity, for black people, they embrace like some elements of Rasta identity, hip hop, and then so they're not having it. So by the time I'm, you get into the noughties. So what I'm trying to say is, okay, so someone I seen an interview with Idris Elba, and he was talking about in the 80s that knife crime was a white on black thing. So it went from the 70s, my dad getting chased by National Front, to the 80s, it's okay, let's stick together, let's fight back, black on white knife crime. To the 90s, you got Stephen Lawrence. That was a white gang that ran him down and they stabbed him to death, right? But then once you get to like my era of London, when I was a teenager, the idea of getting run down by white boys that's not there anymore. That's like what, getting stabbed up by like a group of white boys, that's not there anymore. So suddenly you've got, these groups of kids that are sticking together for one reason, and it kind of like turns on itself. Do you know what I'm saying? And then like what's driving it now is like, it's like getting caught on camera, isn't it? So, it's like from school days or from like when you're in that kind of age, it's like you get caught on camera. A lot of beefs these days in London is about getting caught on camera and having to like, back in the day, you got beat up. No one saw it, or like 5 people saw it. Whereas now everything's documented. And so a lot of the kind of problems, people always want to talk about what we're going to do about knife crime. It's like, well, like young men have always been being violent to each other. It's been escalated by, lack of self-worth, and but also like social media, like the fact that you get like, so you have to come back harder and do something worse on camera, and that's where a lot of these things escalate. And I'm not speaking like man's been in it. Like I'm just, this is what I'm an observer. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, how do you solve that problem? It's not like, like Batman coming down and just like, Batman's gonna start fighting drillers, bruv. Like that's long, bruv. It's like that's really the key would be, how do you break down that mentality, and how do you, I don't know, how do you build up people's self-esteem? How do you make them more empathetic? You know, these are the things. These are how you improve a society, I think.
It's really interesting you mentioned like about your like dad's recalling of NFs and around that time in the 70s and 80s, and well, you mentioned Stephen Lawrence, but I'm reading this book at the moment called, it's a new book that just came out, it's called Reclaiming Racism.
Okay.
And part of it documents the rise of Black Power from the 70s to the 80s, and then later on, I won't get into it, but later on it gets into how kind of anti-racism was allowed to become part of the system, and as a result like defanged of its power, of its radicalness.
Right.
Anyway, I won't get into that. That's a whole day worth of chatting for another day. But yeah, this book talks about so many people being stabbed, and that whole thing that you're talking about, that your dad was talking about, of it being like white on black, white on Asian.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess in that time, there's a very clear, easy task for Batman, right? But like you say, nowadays, and just to stick on the point of anti-racism as well, or racism, it's not as explicit or as overt as in your dad's day when he was younger. I guess right now it's a lot more insidious, it's a lot more systematic. It's why are particularly young black men killing each other? It's not the overt racism, it's the places that they're growing up, young Asian men as well, a lot of young white boys as well. It's the places they're growing up, it's the lack of resources, and Batman's task, I guess, would be a lot more complex and a lot more about empathy. He can't just kick people's asses in this case. There's a lot more talking. It's a lot more him helping to bring those resources back and bring that community structure back, I guess. It's a very different task for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's why you get those memes. I mean, I don't know if you follow... I mean, I love Batman meme culture.
Yeah.
There's like a whole subset of Batman memes. And it's like, it's just hilarious, isn't it? Because they're just like, Batman, like breaking a henchman's legs. He's just taking a package of, he's just getting paid minimum wage.
Right.
Like the idea of like getting paid minimum wage by the Joker to like take a package off like a truck, and like Batman just comes and breaks your legs. That's and then great. You can't feed your family. Like just like I mean, I love those memes, but I think it does speak to the kind of like, where we're at in society, I guess. I love memes, meme culture. I can't wait for the meme museum. That's like, that's gonna be. I'm there.
Yeah, no, same man. And I had a feeling you were a man of such high culture. I got that sense. All right, and I want to ask you about the hero and villain thing, because I guess from the title of your debut album, Murkage Dave Saved My Life, and there's a tweet you put out the other day. I think it was in reference to Kendrick Lamar talking about not being a savior and stuff. It's not just the lightness in your music. There's like definitely reflections on the darkness of life in your music as well. So I want to hear about your ideas of heroism and villainy. So that's what I want to ask. Okay. Thanks for indulging me in all that.
With stuff like this, it kind of, and sometimes I might look back at this and disagree with something that I've said. Do you know what I mean? It's like a work in progress, but I think it's valuable in helping me work out how I feel about things and ideas. So I'm cool, man.
When you're doing that, when you're reflecting, are there any particular moments in your life or in life generally that give you like those gems, give you that inspiration, give you that lyrics that come up more than others, or that you look for?
My brain is just always on, and so I'm always like, someone will walk past me in the street, say something mad, I'll be like, that was cool, take it down. I'll you know, I'm always, yeah, I'm just, I'm always kind of like interested in how people are moving, but also like I'm always thinking, like I'm walking down the street, everything. I mean, like, I think I'm a city kid. I was talking, I've been talking about this a bit with like my missus and stuff, and we're both like this. We're like, a lot of people like kind of have this kind of goal that they want to move out to the suburbs, but like we're like a bit different. Like we like buzz off the energy, and I think that like you're just never short of stimulus, like when you're like in the city, man. And it's just like, for someone with a brain like mine, it's just like, it's not like I have to look for anything or have to put myself in a position. All I have to do is live life, and my brain is just going all the time, just like picking up on everything. I'm looking out the window right now, like just kind of taking in, this street that I live on is perfect, man. It's like you see all kinds of people and all kinds of madness happening, and it's like, I don't know, I just think that like, and just listening to people, speaking to my friends, speaking to strangers, and just hearing what they've got to say, what their experiences are. My family, I've got, I think I say it on like Sadness is on his way. Like, it's like I kind of like, I know, like I've got friends and family from like all walks of life. And, you have conversations with these people, but then also like, just keep your eyes open when you're walking down the street. And just for me, like that's all I need. I don't need to like, like I've never been in the studio thinking, man, what should I talk about? Like that's just like never happened to me. Like there's like endless subject matter like all around you. You just have to kind of like, I guess everybody's different, like everyone's brain is different, but for me, I just have to walk on the street or, phone a friend, or do you know what I mean? And they'll give me like a zillion ideas. I've got like a notes. I got in my iPhone, I got like my notes, and I just have like every day I must put like maybe 10 ideas in those notes like a day, So it's like, yeah, that's what it is.
Right, I see. Very interesting to hear about that process. And yeah, and also just you're saying you're having that kind of conversation with your missus about staying in London. I feel like been talking to people, just friends and people I've met, and more people that have grown up in London are saying that, I think. Compared to that aspiration of like moving out and leaving it. I wonder if there's something like bigger happening like culturally, but people seem to like want to stay here. And in a way, I guess, just from your music, I think you'll be familiar with this experience, but being pushed and pushed and pushed outside of your area or outside of London, there's like this real urge to stay here as well, I think. It's interesting to hear you talking about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like a responsibility, but it's funny because we met an older lady once at the pub. I think it was like she was with her like husband, and they were like original Hackney, Dalstonite kind of people, but they were like from before. So like even before, like they'd been living there before the wave of immigration that happened in like, across, I guess. Now, I don't know how old they were, but I guess like, yeah, I think they would have been. So it's interesting how like, London always changes. So it's like this idea that like this current wave of gentrification is like changing everything. But then like the waves, there's been like waves of immigration every kind of 10 years, I would say, in London, and that has changed things. I think the only thing is with gentrification is it just has this kind of like, there's like a economic, it's very smooth, and it's very, you know, like with when you had like Windrush and people coming over from Asia, and you know, it was more like they were coming in to like join the like working classes. Whereas what you've got now is this thing that's kind of, I've kind of lost my point a bit, but it's kind of like, it's a thing that's kind of like, it's a very smooth thing that's happening. And actually like people that like plan, like town planners and stuff, and like people that plan how areas, like I have a friend who does this in another country, like, or has done it. They don't do it now, but they have done it, where they've like branded an area of a town and worked out, okay, how are we going to get it to this place in 10, 15 years? Okay, well, let's rent out this bit to like artists, cheap rent for artists. And then once the artists come in, we'll do coffee shops, and then young professionals will come in, and then they'll have kids. And do you know what I mean? Like literally they're thinking about it. So I think, I guess like the wave of gentrification now. Okay. The point I was going to make was, when you had these waves of immigration, the people that left, it was more like white flight. So it was like, we don't want to live around here anymore, so we're going to go out. Whereas like now, it's more like, I guess like wealthy people, or like comparatively better off people coming in from outside of London and being able to and people are getting priced out rather than moving out for other reasons. Like, you know, like, I've got like family that could no longer afford to live in London, you know? So I think that like, and have had to move to like other parts of the country, you know? So I think like when you know stuff like that, there is like a, that you do feel like a responsibility to stick it out. Do you know what I mean? Like man's here, like the last real East London alive, like, you know, like in my building, say, I think I'm the only person that's from London in my building.
Wow.
And like in Hackney, like when it's like Easter, I mean, this has been pushed a bit because of, it's been pandemic as well, so people really want to see their families and stuff. But if it's Easter, Christmas, like, bruv, Christmas was a ghost town. It reminded me of like, you know, like a student village, like a student part of it. Like when I lived in Manchester, there's a lot of students used to live in Fallowfield, and when it was like public holidays, obviously there was families that lived in Fallowfield as well, but you could feel how dead the area was when there was no students. And Hackney's kind of turning into that, where like, and I mean, it was great for me. I had some features to write over the Christmas. There was no one around. It was like absolutely perfect. But like at the same time, I mean, like, you know, it's kind of like, it's becoming this kind of that's not like a holiday destination, but like a kind of, it's like a part-time, you know, I mean, it'd be kind of crazy. It's kind of like, that's kind of chaotic if you're like running a business around here and then suddenly everyone's just gone. Like, what do you do? Like if you run a pub or like a cafe, or it's kind of mad. You have to kind of adjust. So yeah. But like that's a long way of saying like, yeah, man's looking to, that's one reason why man's looking to stick about.
For sure. And it's, I agreed with everything you said, man. I spend a lot of time thinking about this because I'm a bit younger than you, and my entire like teens and 20s was shaped by, I grew up in Peckham and the gentrification of Peckham.
Okay.
It's completely shaped, my entire life was shaped by it. So I think about it a lot. I remember before I had like the knowledge or articulation about how this happens, and just like you said, it's not just a thing that happens organically. It's not, and it's also not chaos. It's like very planned. Yeah. And I won't get into it because you've got fans all over the country and the world, and we've got listeners all over. So I don't want to get too local, but like in Hackney, like there's very planned stuff going on from the top that I know about. But anyway,
Can I just say one thing as well, just before we move on?
Yeah.
But one of the things that makes it difficult as well is that like some gentrifiers are cool though as well. Like they're just like nice people. Like so they're not like, so it's not like some of them are like quite entitled and they're like you know, they look down their nose at certain things, but some of them are just blessed. And that also makes it kind of, you know, like it's not like, it's like on paper everyone's like, you know, gentrification, but it's just like people, innit?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Yeah. And it's like I don't know, it's just interesting to me. I think a lot of the time the people that I don't know.
No, I think I know what you mean, especially if you're a person who puts yourself into other people's shoes and you think, like, I often think about like, as much as I find this frustrating, if I grew up outside of London and had a slightly different family or upbringing, maybe I'd be doing exactly the same. And sometimes you can't blame people, but then you also remember like, this isn't all an accident either. This is all planned and outside of their control.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make, that they're just another cog in the machine. Like it's not actually like I remember like at one point like everybody was getting onto those guys who did the serial killer cafe. And like obviously like they were like definitely they were unable to read the room, and like they were kind of out of touch like when they were like doing interviews and stuff. But really, they ended up being like the like focal point of all the like people's like hate, when they're just like a couple of brothers running a cafe. Like, whereas like actually it's like these people that you can't see. It's like, I mean, and no one's even sticking it on Foxtons. It's like you got Foxtons, but then you've got like all the stuff behind Foxtons. Do you know what I mean? And that's really where it is. It's not like serial killer cafe, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think that's all I wanted to say, really. I kind of feel like maybe there's a section of that where like someone could chop out like 10 seconds of what I was saying and make it look like I was defending gentrifiers. But
don't worry, it's not gonna happen. I'll cut out a bit about Batman or something. That'll be the trailer for this. No, I'm not about that. But I hear you. But I also think, just my opinion, that like often we excuse like individuals and individual action. Like as you said, you know, in that example of the brothers that ran that cafe, it's like it was overcharged cereal in the poorest borough of London where kids can't go to school without breakfast. So I think there is like some individual responsibility, but man, as we know, there are bigger forces at play as well. All right, I want to wrap up and come back to the album, because you're talking right at the beginning. You were talking about how you've been chatting to your agent and you're planning this year and next year as well. You know, what kind of things are you thinking about and planning? What can people look forward to?
I guess, do you know what it is? I feel like the difference between after my first album and now moving on to my second, I think with The City Needs a Hero, it's like I've lit the touch paper now, where like I'm just like much more confident in my ability as a songwriter and as an ideas person. And so you're just going to see like in the next 3 years, you're just going to see, I'm just going to be on maximum smoke. Like, just like the songwriting. I mean, you know, I'm so proud of the album that I've just put out, but you haven't even seen the start. It's like this, I've got so many ideas and so many, it's bursting out of me like every day. It's like almost like frustrating that I can't like I've got like 2-3 albums in me right now. So you're just going to be getting really, and I've got so much to discuss, as you can tell. So
Yeah.
it's like all of this stuff is like gonna go, like, I'm just gonna be like, there's gonna be music, but there's gonna be other mediums as well. I want to do stuff, obviously, like, we stepped up the visuals for this album, but I want to do more. I want to make, ultimately I want to make a film like that. There's steps to get to that point, but that's where I want to take it. I want to make longer visual content. There's so much stuff that I want to do. I mean, as I'm talking to you, I'm kind of thinking about a zillion things, and I'm thinking, let me just hold it down.
Yeah.
But basically, there's a lot to do and there's a lot to say, and so I'm going to be incredibly active. That's what I will say.
Well, it's good news. Good news for all lovers of your music to hear. You're very inspired. And
I'm
bursting with ideas. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I can't wait for it all, man. Well, Dave, it's been such a pleasure, man. I've enjoyed just like free thinking about all these different things and just going off into different places. Really enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
No, thank you for the great questions. It's like I said to you off before we started recording, it's like the quality of questions and just the understanding of who I am as an artist now is just like leapt up on this album. It's like everyone I'm talking to, I mean, yours have been, especially, you've kind of been a bit outside of the box with it, the way that you've come at it, which I really liked. But like, it's not lost on me that I'm finally being understood as an artist. And I need to, I'm just reminding myself every day to be like thankful for that,
Well, thank you for the feedback. That's really lovely to hear, man, honestly. So thank you for sharing that. And I mean, just before we like wrap up, just to like remark on that, that's really interesting that you've got to a place where even people that are interviewing you understand you exactly what you're about. I guess maybe that's testament to how much of yourself and inner self you put down in your music, that people are able to understand you so well. Do you reckon?
I guess, yeah. I guess my first album just like laid the kind of, it was my story. I was forced, I think with my first album, I was forced to tell it because it was like survival. It was like, I don't think people were trying to see me as an artist or were trying to see me as other things. And I had to kind of like do that to kind of just be in the room. And it ended up being, up until this album that I've just done, that's the only thing that I've ever been proud of that I've ever made is that album, and I think in a way, by just like letting go of like any I feel like as you're developing as an artist, as a musician, you always kind of like, you start off by like copying artists that you like, and then you like, I don't know, like sometimes you can get, obviously I've got a song called Bad Advice, but you can get like, which is kind of about that. It's like, it's kind of, you can get that bad advice to take a shortcut, or this is the hype thing, or, if you talk about this, then people will like it. And I think that actually what I managed to make happen was the antithesis of that. Just like on my first album, just make something that there's like no consideration for any of that stuff, because I knew that if I failed in the kind of industry commercial idea of what a failure might be, that I at least would have made an album that I could stand on 100%, and I could go and do something else proud that I did that. And I think because I did that, that's actually given me a career and given me a foundation to be understood. So when this new album comes out, people are like, okay, I can see where you were at, and now you've taken it so much further in these directions. I get it. Here are the questions. So it's a great, you know, because on my first album, people were just like, yeah, so tell me about
When did you
Mike
start grime?
Skinner. Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, or like, tell me about it. It was just like very, you know, and I found that frustrating. Whereas like now it's like, man, just, that's why I'm saying I don't mind. I'm happy to talk for an hour or whatever, but because there was a point where no one was even asking me these questions. So I have to remind myself of that, you know.
Well, love for that, Dave, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the time you put in. Yeah, man, it's been such a pleasure. I can't wait for the shows. I can't wait to go and listen to your album again. And yeah, man, I'd love. Yeah, it'd be nice to meet up at your show as well. I'll wave.
Yeah.
I'll shout you down. So yeah,
No,
man,
for
can't
sure.
wait.
Definitely come and say. You gotta say hello, bro. I'm all about the IRL in real life moments, bruv. So yeah, definitely, let's do that.
For real. Well, Dave, thank you very much, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you, brother.